among. Good morning. We're going to call this meeting of the Denton County Transportation Authority Board of Directors to order. We do have a quorum. First up on today's agenda, we do have an invocation. And Pat, can I spring this on you? Do you mind? Thank you, sir.
Heavenly Father, thank you for this wonderful time of season to celebrate your son and all those faith traditions. We thank you for the men and women around this table and the leadership and staff of the DCTA and the citizens of Denton County. Thank you for the prosperous year you've blessed us with. Pray for wisdom and discernment as we discuss important matters today and help us to continue to provide a safe, quality transportation for all residents and to help them prosper in their lives in whatever way possible. Thank you for your love for us, and it's in your son's name. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledges to our flags. American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. All right. I do believe we've got some introductions and awards or recognition to distribute today.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I could invite Ms. Jackie Bronson to the podium, who has a new staff member that she would like to introduce.
Morning.
Mr. Randy Evans to you. This is our new marketing and communications manager. He joined our team about 6 weeks ago and comes to us with some phenomenal decades of experience at North Texas Tollway Authority. So we are super glad to have him join our team.
Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome to the team.
Yeah, and then Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'll go to the podium and make some other recommendations or commendations. So, Mr. Chairman, if I may at this time invite Ms. Gina McGrath, Ms. Cassie Ogden, and Mr. Fred Bushy into the room. Good morning. As this board knows, one of the most impactful things that we accomplished as a team this year was the insourcing of all of the employees that used to be at the North Texas Mobility Corporation and that are now employed by the Denton County Transportation Authority. And a major part of that entire effort was the cooperation and engagement and really the advocacy offered by the members of the NTMC board. And so I had the pleasure of working alongside all three of these fine individuals as we navigated that whole process, and we thought it appropriate to recognize them for their service. So if I may, first, invite Cassie to come this way. Thank you very much for your service. Next up, Ms. Gina McGrath. Thank you very much. And then finally, Mr. Bushy. Thank you very much for your service. So again, a major initiative and effort that can only happen if you have a group of people who are single-minded to do the right thing at the right time. That's certainly what this board did. And so we wanted to say thank you very much for all of your
Greatly appreciated.
Thank you all so much.
Absolutely.
So if we could do just a picture in the front.
You want to get up there too? Let's put the board up there.
Sure thing.
Board up there.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all the work.
Thank you, appreciate it. Present. Thank you.
Congratulations for having
That's the level of busy I am.
me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to do that.
Anytime, Paul, appreciate it. All right. Next up, we have public comment. This agenda item provides an opportunity for citizens to address the DCTA Board of Directors on any agenda items or other matters relating to DCTA. Each speaker will be given a total of 3 minutes to address any items. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. Speakers making personal, impertinent, profane, or slanderous remarks may be removed from the meeting. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stamping of feet, whistles, yells, clapping, and similar demonstrations will not be permitted. Citizens that are not able to participate in person can email public comments to DCTA no later than 3 o'clock the day before the meeting, and ensure the comment will be distributed to the board. We're not permitted to take any action on any subject raised by a speaker during public comments. However, the board of directors may have the item placed on a future agenda for action, refer the item to administration for further study or action, briefly state existing policy, or provide a brief statement of factual information in response to the inquiry. Do we have any public comment today? All right, thank you very much. Next up, board, we have the consent agenda. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. Is there any questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have one comment to make on the meeting minutes. There's a few items that have been corrected that are scrivener's errors that were in the packet that are now been updated. One was the spelling of the city name Carrollton on page 2, and a couple of fiscal years that were transposed 2024 and 2025. Nothing substantive other than that.
Okay. No further comments or questions. I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with the scrivener's errors corrected. I've got a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. We're gonna rejigger the agenda just a little bit. We've got some time constraints today, so my apologies for that. Would like to go ahead and open up items 2 and 3 as those are discussion and action items that are interrelated. Item 2 is to discuss the initial work plan for the A-Train Enhancement Program, and item 3 is to authorize the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate and execute a master professional services agreement with H.W. Lochner for a 3-year initial term. We have Mr. Austin Frith working through our technology challenges. No worries.
All right, good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, happy holidays. We're gonna talk firstly about our initial work plan for the A-Train Enhancement Program. This is a discussion only item, no action is required on this one. So as a brief look back, our enhancement program includes the expansion of our existing service on our A-Train. This program incorporates the long-term goal of achieving 15-minute headways, the extension down to downtown Carrollton, the addition of a future station at Corinth. The scope involves significant investments in the A-Train, including additional track segments and station enhancements to accommodate increased service frequency. So this initial work plan for the A-Train program outlines key steps to ensure successful delivery of the program objectives. It focuses on validating the operational model and infrastructure program, establishing a framework for long-term success, resolving immediate challenges, and aligning program execution with funding, stakeholder expectations, and regulatory requirements. This plan prioritizes strategic alignment, ensuring immediate actions support long-term goals for expanded and enhanced service on the A-Train, and collaboration with stakeholders in securing funding will be critical elements to its implementation. Initial work plan for the A-Train program management outlines key steps to guide the program along. It includes a project summary to identify tasks and timelines, a project management plan to manage scope, schedule, and resources, project controls to oversee budgets and refine cost estimates. The plan also ensures compliance and coordination with regulations and stakeholders while considering environmental factors. And lastly, reporting and review processes to promote transparency through progress reports and audits. Structured approach ensures alignment with program goals and fosters delivery through focus, execution, and collaboration. If you recall, this slide outlines the progression of the program into phases, with key decision points impacting design and construction funding allocation. Excuse me. The next critical step involves curve and speed enhancements, as you'll see in the upcoming slides. The Corinth station remains a standalone decision, not impacting overall program timeline. And this commitment to achieving 15-minute headways remains a priority for the agency. Key decisions include investments in the EATC improvements, base track upgrades, and operational impacts tied to service adjustments requirements, strategic funding, and alignment to proceed effectively. Based on the decision matrix we saw on the previous slide, we've organized the program into three phases with a potential phase to add the Corinth station. Phase 1 focuses on the curve and speed improvements. This will enhance efficiency and improve travel times. Phase 2 involves extending the service down to downtown Carrollton, increasing connectivity and ridership potential. And then finally, Phase 3 implements the 15-minute headway improvements, achieving a key milestone in service frequency and reliability. Additionally, Corinth Station, as we mentioned, is a potential scope add which can be incorporated independently without impacting the overall program timeline. So the initial work plan for the curve and speed enhancements aims to achieve approximately a 5-minute runtime improvement in both directions for the A-Train. To support this goal, the consultant will review and validate track design and simulation modeling for corridor improvements, confirm speed changes and runtime savings based on existing design drawings, and evaluate schedule impacts while recommending necessary adjustments. These enhancements are a critical step in optimizing efficiency and improving overall service performance. And as you can see, we've mentioned this chart below. This is the proposed plan for the current track speeds that you'll see in the red, and the proposed track speeds you'll see in the blue. And what we're going to be doing in the initial work plan is, excuse me, seeing if we can improve on any of these areas, especially when we're in the blue area. We'd like to see if we can get those speeds up even a little bit more than what we're showing here. So that'll be part of the initial plan. The subsequent task order associated with the initial work plan is anticipated after model validation, includes initiating preliminary design and defining a funding strategy for each program element within the phases. This involves developing appropriate delivery strategies and refining schedules based on inputs. Initial critical elements to the program include coordination with cities, DG&O, or short line rail operator, and DART through interlocal agreements, as well as identifying and addressing utility conflicts and other areas of complexity. These steps are to ensure strategic alignment, effective coordination, and streamlined implementation. Task order is anticipated to be brought to the board in January for approval. And that is our update on the initial work plan. Happy to answer any questions.
Board, any questions, comments, concerns? 5 minutes is awesome.
5 minutes is awesome. I'm excited to see us get that going. It's interesting. This past week, I've gotten quite a few questions from various folks across the region about connectivity. Silver Line is starting to become top of mind. I don't know why it's just now getting to people's minds, but it's suddenly a real thing. So I'm very excited about the whole process.
I would echo. I mean, I think to the public, they're thinking it's 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a pretty big deal. running a
When
train.
you're waiting, it's,
And the wait time, et cetera. This is a very significant, project for us. So thank you for bringing this.
So in coordination with that, we also need folks to help us figure out how to get from here to there. So we've got the next item, which is
Yes, sir.
Lochner.
so our next agenda item 3 is authorization for the chief executive officer to negotiate and execute a master professional service agreement with H.W. Lochner for a 3-year initial term up to 2 one-year renewals for A-Train program management. So this recommendation is to authorize the chief executive officer to negotiate this contract agreement. It includes initial term of 3 years with the option for 2 one-year renewals. This partnership will ensure consistent and professional oversight for the program's planning, coordination, and execution, aligning with the program's goals and long-term objectives. This step is critical in maintaining momentum and achieving successful outcomes for the A-Train program. So this program management contract emphasizes fostering alignment and effective communication regarding the program's vision, strategy, and execution. The consultant's role includes providing technical expertise to support informed decision-making on technologies, implementation strategies, funding approaches, and delivery methods, while ensuring quality assurances in reviewing technical deliverables. The request for proposal process highlights key milestones, beginning with the solicitation that happened in July, during which 74 firms were contacted, and of those 74, 21 downloaded the solicitation documents. Strong interest was reflected in the pre-bid meeting later that month. Appreciate the support by our procurement department in that, attended by 13 participants representing 10 firms. The technical evaluation phase in August and September included input from DART, ensuring a comprehensive review of candidates, followed by interviews in October. Final evaluations and scoring took place later in October, with notification and rate submittals concluding in November. Significant collaborative effort went into negotiating consultant fees, requiring in-depth discussions to ensure fairness, transparency, and alignment with program objectives. Rigorous process culminates in today's recommendation, marking a key step in advancing this program. This master agreement is designed to provide flexibility and effective cost management for the program. It includes a predefined rate schedule to ensure consistent pricing across tasks, individual task order approvals for better alignment, and no assigned dollar value, with cost incurred only as task orders are executed under an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity structure. This agreement's for purpose and benefits include minimizing unnecessary expenditures through task order approvals, dynamically allocating funds to high priority areas within the program, supporting flexibility, accountability, and fiscal responsibility. So how is the structured team made up? H.W. Lochner's team structure strategically aligns experienced teams to key areas of responsibility. Lochner, Jacobs, and LAN lead the project and program management, leveraging their extensive experience and expertise in large-scale transit projects across the region and nation. Triunity and LAN oversee project controls and quality assurance, providing robust processes to maintain high standards. Jacobs brings specialized knowledge to environmental services, design management, and rail fleet maintenance, ensuring compliance and efficiencies. Bowman and Terracon handle construction management with a focus on precision and reliability, while Bowman also provides value engineering expertise to optimize resources. Community outreach is led by JBJ Management, ensuring strong stakeholder engagement, and RSC manages safety integration and startup. DGR consultants handle real estate with a focus on strategic acquisitions and land use. And this thoughtful allocation of responsibilities ensures that each program component is executed by teams with appropriate skill set and expertise. The H.W. Lochner team is structured to align with DCTA's priorities, bringing together experienced professionals to address every critical aspect of this extensive program. Leadership team provides oversight, ensuring the program stays on track and aligned with long-term objectives, while program management focuses on achieving key milestones, maintaining timelines, and meeting quality expectations. Supporting this effort are teams dedicated to quality assurance, project controls, and grant administration, ensuring operational excellence. Specialized groups are tackling areas such as environmental compliance, rail design, engineering, system program integration, and construction oversight. Additionally, the team emphasizes collaboration across stakeholders, sharing contractors and external partners, foster clear communication and efficient decision-making. So this chart oversees, communicates the responsibilities and strategic allocated across the program. Largest concentration, as you'll see, are the roles in the preliminary engineering and design oversight. And this emphasizes the critical importance of detailed planning and design to the success of the program. Track improvements and support services also represent significant portions of staff, ensuring infrastructure enhancements and operational support are prioritized. Additional roles are distributed across environmental specialists, construction management, and public involvement in government affairs. Smaller teams focused on senior management, value engineering, and product controls provide strategic oversight, cost optimization, and process management. This distribution reflects a well-rounded approach, ensuring the program is supported by the necessary expertise in all key areas. This chart goes over the experience, years of experience by role comparison. This highlights the depth of expertise within the A-Train program management team. Senior management brings a wealth of experience to provide strategic leadership and informed decision-making. Engineering roles here and construction management offer strong technical capabilities. Cost estimation, environmental specialists contribute to critical expertise to support budgeting and compliance efforts. So this overall broad experienced team is well positioned to guide the program forward. And then when we talk about rates, this reflects the outcome of thorough and extensive analysis and collaboration between DCTA and H.W. Lochner to ensure fair and competitive pricing for the A-Train program management contract. Benchmarks were derived from 3 local contracts with similar scopes, focusing on transit and transportation program management roles. The benchmark base represents the baseline rates. The benchmark option here accounts for optional contract year pricing within those contracts. And the benchmark average combines those two. Through diligent efforts, DCTA and Lochner worked together to align the expertise required. Roles such as senior management and engineering highlight this alignment, emphasizing the commitment we have to cost-effective, high-quality services that support our program goals. So when we talk about value-driven approach, this chart emphasizes the expertise that Lochner is bringing to the program, with the team structure specifically aligned to deliver top-notch results. Their senior management team offers decades of experience ensuring strong project oversight and effective risk management. Engineering roles are staffed by experts in commuter rail systems and complex infrastructure, which we have, delivering tailored, high-quality solutions. For cost estimation, Lochner employs a detailed bottom-up approach to create precise and actionable budgets. Construction management focuses on ensuring reliable systems and smooth integration of technology to avoid delays and keep projects on track. Environmental specialists bring localized knowledge and industry-aligned practices to maintain compliance. And the public involvement team enhances outreach efforts and government relations, aligning with DCTA's broader strategic goals. So in summary, this team structure incorporates an extensive library of lessons learned from similar projects across the region and the nation, ensuring extensive value and commitment to delivering reliable and specialized solutions across our program. And with that, we recommend the board authorize the chief executive officer to negotiate and execute a master professional services agreement with H.W. Lochner for a 3-year initial term and up to 2 1-year renewals for A-Train program management.
I'll move for approval.
I got a motion to approval
Second.
and a second. Any questions or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. I want to thank you guys for the diligence. I know there's a lot of moving parts on this and I appreciate your offline, making sure that everything is going to be coming through the board so that we can cap that. I would expect that we get kind of a running tally as we go, just so we can have an understanding of the budget that is being expended as we go through the process.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, gentlemen. All right.
Now let's go to
Let's go back up to item 1. Item one, consider approval of monthly financial statements for September 2024, quarterly grants report for Q4 fiscal year 2024, and receive an update from the Chief Financial Officer regarding Enterprise Resource Program implementation and finance operations.
Good morning, Board.
Good morning.
Sherelle Evans Jones, Chief Financial Officer. I'm pleased to be here with you today to talk about a number of different things. We'll cover overall financial performance, including the performance of our investments. We'll cover grant updates, and I'll give you some updates in terms of how the ERP transition for phase one is progressing. So included in your packet was the financial statements. I'll just touch on some of the highlights for how we have performed fiscal year to date. One of the things I'm actually going to do is jump forward to the end of the thing, and then we'll talk about any particulars. So in terms of our overall revenue, we're at $59.7 million of actual revenue. And I'm going to jump ahead and kind of show compared to 57 million of actual expenditures. So net performing at a net positive net income perspective. And that $57 million includes depreciation, is inclusive of depreciation. So I'm gonna jump back here. Don't mean to take you on a wild ride so that you can see all the different slides, but the way my mind works is it's like, what is the full story? And then we drill into the details. So I wanted you to understand that piece first. In terms of passenger revenue, we had some great successes there with a total actual of $1.9 million compared to a budget of 1.8. So performing about 9.3% ahead of budget. And that largely has to do with the positive ridership that we've experienced this year in terms of reaching the 3.2 million rides that the organization has experienced. Contracted revenue is one where we are performing at 4.6 million compared to a budget of 6.6 million. I want to refer you back to a couple of things that are included in that 6.6 million. One is the estimate related to bringing in our Collin County Rides program. So that would have been one that we adopted and brought in during the course of the FY24 year. We brought in both revenues and expenditures based on estimates and due diligence that we did with our partners with DART and making that transition. And so some of those estimates, both on the revenue and the expenditure side, were a little bit overstated. Net, we receive revenue based on the expenditures that we incur. So on a net basis, and that's why I jumped ahead to show you on a net basis, it works out. But I think that the revenue numbers that we inherited were higher. We have adjusted that in our FY25 budgets that we presented. Sales tax is one at 40.6 million, just a hair above that 40 million total. And so that came out to be about a 1.5 million, a 1.5% ahead of budget performance in terms of sales tax. And that 1.5% is also kind of why, as we get into that budgeting timeframe, you'll usually hear me being more conservative about what revenue increases and estimations that are anticipated related to sales tax, because it can be great some years and not in other years, and you want to be conservative in those estimates. Both the capital and operating grants perform as a reimbursement grant. Those are reimbursements, and they reimburse for expenditures that we have incurred. So the significant differential with the capital grant, where it was a $2.5 million estimated budget compared to a $914,000 actual, the main line item included in that budget was for PTC, or positive train improvement reimbursement expenditures. We didn't spend the money. We didn't execute that program during this year. We're working with the FRA to realign that and to make that expenditure during this upcoming year, or during this current year. And so accordingly, you don't see the expenditure happening in the actuals. In terms of our operating expenditures, again, I'm kind of hearkening back to, I'm gonna actually jump ahead and help you to see where we had larger expenditure plans during the year than what came through in actuals, and all of those things are factors in what we're able to request in terms of reimbursements from our operating assistance grants. Good thing I'm already on this page. I'm going to talk briefly through some of the areas, not every single one of them, because it's quite a few lines. But if you have questions about any of them, I encourage you to let me know. The salary and wage benefits is one area where we had savings. You have seen us introduce staff members over the course of the year. As those staff members have come in, our FY '24 budget presumed full staffing for that period. And as we've worked to increase those staffing levels, they haven't panned out into the actuals for the full 12-month period. Purchase transportation services at 24.8 million of an actual compared to 25 million on budget, largely tracking according, for a number that large, largely tracking according to plan. And so overall, we have savings in some areas having to do with material and supplies, and some savings in terms of utilities that bring us down to a $57 million total compared to 73 million with where we were with budget. This is that third page that kind of picks up some of the investment. The main activity on this page is like investment income, and that has been pretty positive, a total of $7.8 million. So the investment income is doing well, but I'll have some comments coming up as we get into some of the particulars in terms of our investments to cover. Are there questions here before I move into grants?
More of a just a general understanding. If we have budgeted 73 and we come in at 57, is there missed opportunity as far as grant money that might have to go back that's in that number, or am I conflating a couple of things?
If the grants that we have are able to be rolled forward into future years.
Okay, so the
they're not
expectation
missed-
is,
Yeah,
so the expectation is whatever percentage of that is grants, we're gonna be pursuing and finishing that this year,
absolutely.
like the PTC program.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mhm. One thing I also wanted to say with respect to the numbers that you're seeing here, we are talking about the September 30th, 2024 full year performance. Those numbers are currently, we're preparing our audit schedules for our auditors. We anticipate them to be conducting that, the field work portion of their audit during early January. And so we hope to be back before you and at the February meeting to have these numbers reviewed and talked about from an audit perspective. I'm explaining that these numbers that you're seeing are not audited and they remain subject to change as we work through that process. Okay, so grants. Thank you for your question about grants. What we're showing here is activity or changes between between Q3 and Q4, where you see numbers that are increasing. That is, either we have expanded the grant, we have added, we have requested additional funding related to the grant. As we get to the back end of the year, you'll see changes happening quite a bit, especially in this operating assistance where we have spent the funding down and we've requested a new tranche of funding to take care of the remainder of FY '24 and into the first part of FY '25. And you can kind of see the details in terms of what each one of those grants helps us to be able to do. Some of those things include, for instance, the Collin County rides, This first one up here is primarily taking care of operating assistance, fleet replacement, some kinds of maintenance. We have a couple of them that are available to us for certain types of fleet replacement. This COG grant is one related to land acquisition and construction for the Old Town development. So just kind of giving you the idea of the balances that remain available for certain ones of those. Certain ones we're able to replenish. Others, this is an example where we have a finite amount of funding related to that particular grant, and it's not one that we can just request additional drawdowns related to. Okay. Investments. It's a good investment story in terms of the overall performance of the investments throughout the course of the year. Book value, 118.6 million compared to a market value of 118.7. Like when I was before you last quarter, it was an unrealized loss. That's going to move back and forth depending on whenever the camera lens opens. I like to maybe use that analogy. Whenever the camera lens opens to say what is the value of the investment at that particular point in time, it's going to move back and forth. In terms of the quality or the credit quality and the types of assets that are the subject of investments, 97% of those are AAA rated. All of the investments that we have in the portfolio are ones that comply with our investment policy. And I included a copy within your board packet if you would like to review through the particulars of those investments that the organization holds, and any other details, they are all there for you to peruse. This gives you an idea of the years of maturity of those investments. So the reason I'm including this, and maybe that little note that I included to the side to give you a little bit of perspective. So when I was before you and giving an update on the June numbers, that this number in this position was 5.2% in terms of a yield. So what we're seeing in terms of what's happening from a market perspective is a little bit of softening in terms of the earnings potential for invested assets. Currently, how do I show you this? Currently, we have a majority of funds included in a local government investment pool. That is your Techstar. We use a text pool function. Some local governments or municipal governments you may have heard of Techstar or the like. So essentially, what we have been working through as we're seeing a softening in that investment earnings is moving as many assets out of this pool, because this operates much like cash, but with a higher earning potential, much like a savings account, but with a higher earnings potential. It is still an investment, and moving it into high credit quality AAA investments that will not have their earnings potential to change so quickly as it might in a local government investment pool. Does that?
It's analogous to like a money market account,
Yes,
and that you're moving it into like.
into securities, into,
Bonds of some sort.
yeah, into approved items such as bond funds, such as agencies. Like all of these other items are actual invested assets with CUSIP numbers, et cetera. So I'm saying that, simply put, this is going to start changing. You're not going to continue to pull 4.9%. And so the name of the mindset is to move things into invested assets that have a stated earnings amount that don't change quickly, because when you invest in them, you're investing in them for a 6-month, a 9-month, or whatever period, and you have locked that earnings down. You see what I'm saying? So, what we've been working through is moving funding into those invested assets while at the same time maintaining liquidity that we need from a business perspective. Okay. ERP phase 1. So we're moving. We have another check. We've completed the prepare solutions. They refer to them as stages. So we've completed that prepare solution stage and we've moved into production readiness. So some of the things that we have done, one of the things that we've done is we've completed user acceptance testing. And I put a little frowny face next to that because it is an inordinate amount of work to get the team through. I'll talk a little bit more about what user acceptance testing is, but it was a lot of work to get the team through that. And as I was working with our implementation consultants and our project managers to get an update with some of these graphs, I'm looking like, well, why did we do all that work and we only got like a little 2% tick for that particular phase? But we have so many more things that we have left to do in terms of this particular stage. The things that we're working through is working this go live checklist. There are hundreds of items on that list in terms of making sure that all the particular things are done, ready to go, et cetera. Working a cutover plan. I think of the cutover plan as like when you're leaving your house for a vacation or something. You go in the back, the furthest back bedrooms and you turn off those lights and you make sure this is done and you back out of this room and you make sure this is okay. And essentially that's what we're doing with this existing software, this legacy software that we have. We have a very specific plan of when are the last dates purchase orders are going in? When are the last dates checks are coming out? When are the dates that we're pulling the data over and testing it, et cetera? So what I'm saying is we have to work that cutover plan. And then the other significant thing that we have left before us is end user training and the preparation for that training. So it's user acceptance testing, the item that we just completed recently has more to do with it has more to do with our internal finance and IT team and testing every aspect of the system to make sure both that it's working properly and that we know how to work it properly, that the system works and you know what you're doing. And so this next phase, end user preparation and training, has to do with conveying that knowledge to our other team members who will be users within the system. April 1st, we got a date certain, April 1st. We're going live. And I'm excited about it. One of the things, so there's things that are going to change. There are things that we definitely expect a lot of improvement, lots of efficiency to be gained from this transition, or otherwise, why would you do it, right? But one of the things I'm aware of, and you might be interested in this, is you see us saying an April 1st go live date. Typically, what we're doing in April is we are preparing our department teams for the next year's budget. Those department teams are putting together their budgets. We're getting ready in May to have those meetings so that we can we're getting ready in May to have internal meetings so that we can meet with you in June to start that process of talking about what that budget is. So if we're doing this very significant thing in April, what we anticipate is probably starting that process about a month later than we typically do, and running it through September instead of what we normally do, which is concluding the budget by August. We're still working through whether we can adjust something, but I anticipate that to be one of the outcomes of the go live date. And then I mentioned before, we have a number of post go live activities, which includes moving all of the legacy data into a new database so that we can respond to any open records requests or historical, have historical information. It also, post go live activities also include things that you are unable to do until you have live data in your system, like bank reconciliations and certain year-end close processes that are part of the plan to work through in a post-go live capacity.
Sherelle, if I could really quick,
Yes.
just also mention here, the other thing layering into the period between now and April 1st is the FTA has notified us that we're due for our triennial review. That's the compliance audit that the federal government uses to make sure that we're spending all of our money correctly. So the good news is we're very, very prepared for that with work we've already done. And that Cheryl and her team are already talking to the FTA about maybe sliding some of those dates and deliverables so that we can work all these things into what will be a pretty busy few months at the beginning of the year. So,
Thank you.
yes, ma'am.
This is just a visual of the different modules that we've had to work through. And where they are in their, in terms of their percentage of completion as of the December 2nd date. That date was when we concluded our user acceptance testing and when our project managers had compiled some information to be able to send that over to us. Significant, so the main key accomplishments that we have between the last time I talked with you about this project is significant configuration has been complete. We have ordered the compatible hardware, tested it, make sure it's set up and working correctly. Here's another random thing that you might not think about is there are currently checks coming out of our existing system, but there will be new checks coming out of this new software package. And you kind of got to test those through the bank and make sure that they're not going to reject them, you know, when they go through that process. So we've completed that external process and just lots and lots of work to get the team prepared for this user acceptance testing. That user acceptance testing was a pretty big deal. And so I'm gonna talk about it for just 2 more slides, if you will indulge me. Huge thanks to this team. They worked so hard. This room that we are conducting board business in last week it was last week, right? It seems like it was like 9 years ago, but it was last week that it was set up as a war room of sorts to work through our user acceptance testing. That is the full finance team, our Mark Gibson in the corner, and then from IT, and then 2 members of our Tyler implementation team that worked through that, and it took a lot to get there. Well, what happened as a result of user acceptance testing? I'll tell you. I keep kind of running you through the models, the modules that we have, and all of these modules have individual testing scenarios. Can the user do this? Can the user perform this function? And you can kind of see the number of different scenarios that each one of those modules was subjected to from a testing perspective. We were kind of skip ahead past all of those modules, past all of that in terms of demonstrating our understanding of the system and demonstrating that the system is working correctly with a 96.2% pass rate. Passing is 80%. We really killed it, and I'm so proud of the team. Congratulations to the team for working through the second stage of this, and we just got one more little hill to climb. One more little hill to climb until we get to the April 1st go live. Any questions? Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Great work. Appreciate that. So this is an action item, so I'll entertain a motion to approve the monthly financial statements and the quarterly grants report. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Evans-Jones. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and move on to item 4, discuss an update on Consolidated Denton County Transportation Authority customer service function. I do have to step out of the meeting at this time, at which point I will hand it over to Mr. Molina.
You're gonna miss all the fun.
I know. I also have lots of questions. So we'll get there.
Good morning, Randy.
Well, good morning, board. My name is Randy Trantham, Customer Service Manager, and this is my first time presenting to y'all, so I'm very excited to be here today. Well, today I'm going to discuss and give an update on the consolidation of our DCTA customer service function. Just as a reminder, this item is for discussion only, and there will be no action required for the board. Now, for our objectives today, we're going to take a look at our current customer service model And then we'll review our FY 24 data set for both GoZone and DCTA. And then lastly, we'll wrap it up with some options in order for us to help improve our DCTA customer service to help our DCTA portfolio. But before we get into that, I want to provide you with a little bit of background on how we got here today. October of last year, Paul gave you all this initial concept of customer service evolution. Out of that discussion, direction was given to hire a customer service manager. So I was brought on board in April of this year. And then in June of this year, our NTMC support staff, including customer service, transitioned over to DCTA. And then lastly, in July, our NTMC operations staff transitioned to DCTA as well. Now, before we dive into all of the lovely data, I want to give you kind of this model of what it is to be a customer for DCTA. So what we're going to do is pretend that we are a customer and you need to ask a question about GoZone. You need to book a GoZone ride. You have an account question about your GoZone account. So what you'll do is dial into our customer service line. You'll press option 2. And from there, you'll be transferred over to our VIA call center. VIA helps fill those GoZone calls for us. Now, let's say you want to book a paratransit trip. You want to check on your paratransit trip. You have a question about some of our network offerings as far as A-Train and Connect. You'll press any of our additional options in which you'll be transferred to our in-house customer service. And then lastly, let's say you find yourself at the downtown Denton Transit Center and you walk into our lobby, you need to purchase a fare, you have questions about our service. There you'll be greeted by 2 of our lobby representatives as well. Now, this customer service model that I just explained is supported by the department chart that you see here. We have a customer service manager, a lead customer experience coordinator, and then 5 customer experience coordinators. Now, of those 5 customer experience coordinators, 3 of them are dedicated to answering the phone. So when they come in every day, they're able to answer the phone throughout the day. However, we have 2 additional representatives who are what we call dual reps. So when you come into that lobby, they'll be the ones helping you. However, they're able to answer phone calls as well. So they split their time between the phones and the lobby. And then we have our lead customer experience coordinator that we're recruiting for that position right now, but they're going to be responsible for assisting with the representatives when they need assistance, but also they'll be able to answer phone calls intermittently as well. So our DCTA operation, we are open 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then Saturday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Again, those calls that we are fielding are general questions, needing help booking those multimodal trips, booking paratransit rides, etc. Now, what you'll see represented here on this chart is our FY23 and FY24 monthly call volume. Now, this call volume is broken down between calls answered and calls abandoned. So those are calls that were not answered that came in through our call center. One thing I would like to highlight on here is that from FY23 to FY24, we did see a spike in our call volume, and that can be attributed to, our ridership has grown, so that's going to cause more people to call in and have those questions about our services. And then another thing I want to notate is that in our August FY24 and September FY24, you see that spike in our abandoned calls. Well, in August, we launched this wonderful thing called an ISP. And our services did change for people who were used to using GoZone in our Connect routes. So those people did call in, and we had an influx of those calls during a certain time frame that we just weren't able to handle. So that's where we saw that spike in our call abandonment rate. As for FY24, we had a monthly average of over 3,700 calls, and that's averaging about 143 calls per day. And just to reiterate, remember, we have those 5 FTEs who are staffing, but 3 of those are just answering the phones, and the other 2, I'm skipping ahead. Other 2 are splitting their time between the lobby and the phone as well. Do I have any questions on this before I move on? Yes.
How do you handle Spanish-speaking only customers?
I have a language line that we transfer them to. Okay, so what you'll see represented here is the table here is our call metrics. Now, with a call center, you have the option to measure pretty much anything. However, in order to do that, you have to have a robust customer resource management system or CRM system. Right now, we do not have that. So what I am able to measure in order for us to start saying, hey, we're doing good in this area, we have room for improvement, are these three things right here. So our quality assurance score is going to be based off, it's a QA program, basically. So what's happening is I'm pulling a sample of calls for each representative each month. I'm grading those on a score sheet, and that's going to produce our quality assurance score. Now, this was just introduced into our department in August of this year. So I've spent August and September calibrating with the representatives in order to get them better acquainted with it, so they understand what's expected of them. October 1 marked the beginning of us actually taking those scores and recording them. So next discussion, we'll have more data on that to see how we're doing. But as for our target, we have a 90%, which is industry standard with a QA score for customer service. And then you'll see for the FY24 actual, we don't have anything. For our average handle time is any time one of our representatives is on the phone with the customer. So as soon as they say, thank you for calling DCTA, and as soon as they hang up the phone and wrap up their 15-second wrap-up time, that is going to compute that average for our average handle time. Industry standard is about 4 minutes or less, and we're sitting at 3 minutes and 14 seconds. And I want to say that's really a testament to our staff right now, because they want to make sure that the customer is taken care of in a timely manner in order to get to that next call. So they're knocking it out the park with this. And then we have our call abandonment rate. Call abandonment is any call that does not reach our representative. So you call in and say, oh, got the wrong number, hang up. That's going to contribute to our call abandonment rate. Or you're waiting on hold too long, you got to go, hang up. That's going to contribute as well. So industry standard is about 8%. Right now, we're sitting at 24% for FY24. And if you're like me, that probably gives you a little bit of heartburn to see that we're not hitting that industry standard, but that's okay. Because what I see right here is that we have opportunity to improve, and we can start looking at the data in order to help us see where we have those areas that we can make some changes. So one thing I'm looking at with the call abandonment rate, and I'm using, is the chart you see here is our FY24 average call per hour. And what you'll see, remember we're open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. is at that 7 a.m. hour, we're staffing 1 FTE. Now this is an FTE that is a dual representative. So she's opening up the lobby, that lobby traffic's coming in, she can't answer the phone if she's helping someone face to face. And she's helped open up the phones as well. So from that 7 to 8 o'clock hour, we see that surge in calls. And at that point, we have 3 additional reps scheduled to come in at that 8 o'clock hour. But anything can happen throughout the day. Like right now, we have one of those representatives who's out on extended leave, so we don't have that full, 4 FTEs that are coming in and having that call volume. So from 8 to 9, we start to see a small decline, and we stay pretty stagnant from that 9 to 10 o'clock hour. And then at 10 o'clock, we have our last representative come in for staffing for the day. We have a small decline, and then you see we have a surge within about the 3 o'clock hour, and then we start to decline for the rest of the day. Now, what I do want to point out here is from that 6 to 7 hour, we have 1 representative who's staffed, that 10 to 7 representative. However, we're only averaging about 2 to 3 calls in that hour, and we have 1 person taking those phone calls. So one thing that I'm going to move forth with is moving that representative from a 9 to 6 shift. And so we can go ahead and stop taking phone calls at 6 o'clock. So we can help with that surge in calls at 9 o'clock. In addition to that, one of the representatives who comes in at 8 o'clock is going to get moved to a 7 to 4 o'clock shift. So that lobby representative can focus on those lobby customers, and we have someone picking up the phone call. So with those small shifts, we should start seeing some of that call abandonment rate decline. Yes.
Do we have a number for the average wait time on the phone?
No, we don't have a number for the average wait time because our current system is not able to calculate that. Yeah,
Okay.
that's where I talked about the customer resource management system. Once we're able to get that in, we'll have that and see how we're doing. Yeah, good question. Okay, so what you're seeing here is what I like to call a workforce scheduler. And I built this out in order to determine how many representatives I'm going to have on the phone in 15-minute increments. This helps because, as you know, throughout the day, people go to lunch, people go to breaks, have to step away to do additional duties. So this allowed me to say, okay, if we're at the 10 o'clock hour, we have someone on break, I'm only going to have 4 reps available. And this is if we're fully staffed, right? In addition to that, just a reminder, 2 of these representatives are in the lobby, so they're helping they're helping that walk-in traffic as well, taking them away from their phone. But this is just a tool that I use, especially if I have someone who's going to be out for the day. I can move the schedule accordingly to make sure that I'm trying to cover the shift the best that I can.
Back one slide.
Yes, back one slide. Mhm. Okay, so we've gotten through DCTA. Let's talk about GoZone now. So GoZone's operation is open 7 days a week, 365. They're open Monday through Thursday, 5 a.m. to 1 a.m., Friday and Saturday, 5 a.m. to 2 a.m., and then Sunday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Again, the questions that they're helping with are booking GoZone trips, where's my ride, account questions, etc. Now, with their FY 23 and 24 data, we have the same data set where we have calls answered and calls abandoned. One thing I do want to point out here is you see that we have a decline from FY 23 to 24. And this decline really started to happen within this November month. Now, in conversations with VIA, did ask, what do you think contributed to this decline? And what they advised me is that during this time frame between August and November, they launched an IVR recording. So if you call in, press option 2, and then you want to book a ride, there's a recording that says, hey, did you know that you can download our app and book your ride, save some time on your wait time. I'm paraphrasing that. That's not exactly what they say, but close enough. And so once they launched that, they started seeing a decrease in those ride bookings. And so that's why you're seeing that decrease in call volume for them. And so here's just a snapshot of some of their call metrics. Now, they do measure more than us. However, I just wanted to mirror what I'm looking at for our department right now. So for their quality assurance, their target is 90%. They're hitting about 92. Average handle time, same, 4 minutes or less, and they're just a little over 4 minutes.
Where are these calls being answered?
It's our VIA call center.
So
It's an offsite call center.
I can take that. So the contract that we have with VIA for outsourced customer service has these calls going to call centers that some of which we understand are stateside, like in Salt Lake City, Utah. Others are being answered in overseas locations.
I think that's okay.
And that is the reason that we are having, that one of the main drivers behind why we're having this conversation is we believe that localized customer service is the right way to go. And so our ability to answer these calls locally improves customer service overall.
Thank you, Paul. So for their call abandonment rate, that's actually not a target that they measure. However, they did provide me with theirs, and it's a little over 4%. Now, if we take a look at their calls per average, you'll see that they have that surge or that peak call volume in the 1 o'clock hour. It stays pretty even too, and then it starts declining at 3 o'clock. I'm in discussions with VIA right now to see if we can analyze that and see what customer behaviors are actually driving that call volume at 1 o'clock. Because remember, ours is at that 8 o'clock hour when when everyone is waking up and getting ready, but there's. And here's a snapshot of the monthly call types that they take and goes on for FY 23 and 24. Again, going back to them launching that IVR message, you'll see that their ride bookings had that decrease about 25% from FY 23 to 24. 92% of their calls 92% of the rides are actually booked through the app. And then this ride booking call is about 49% of their total call volume. And then here you'll see a snapshot of a DCTA and GoZone calls combined. So we've taken a look at our total call volume and DCTAs, and this is a FY 24 snapshot of our call volume. GoZone call volume is approximately 3 times the amount of DCTAs. And the GoZone ride booking is about 6,300 calls per month, and 4,800 are the others. So that those other call types that you saw in there, ride status, account questions, et cetera, that makes up for those additional calls. And something that I thought was interesting is that if you completely eliminate those ride booking calls, so everyone is 100% using the app, that call volume, that other call volume is still about double what DCTAs is right now. So you may be questioning like, well, if you are adding on all those additional, you're saying right now that you can't handle your call volume, what can be done? Well, that's what we're looking at right now. We're taking a look at these metrics and seeing, you know, staffing wise, resources wise, reporting wise, what can we do in order to improve, in order to take those calls?
So question, do we have a similar program to what VIA does that we direct people to the app? If we were to absorb these?
Not right now. No, we don't have a recording on our IVR right now.
Well, we don't have an IVR, but
Yeah.
what we do have is live customer service representatives who do teach people how to go to the app store and download the app. And I think, Randy, you've got an anecdote about the Collin County Rides program and the ability to grow ride bookings by app in that program. So our customer service representatives are telling people to go how to use the app when they get those calls.
Right. And I'm just,
It's just not the automated voice response.
so I guess that leads to, that leads to my next question was, would you expect that this volume would go up from 70, an average of 7,500 back up to the 10,000 calls that you were seeing?
If we remove that if we absorb the calls, well, no, because what we would plan for are those self-service. Like we would plan for the education and be able to help empower our customers to be more self-sufficient. So just like Paul said, we're doing right now, it's not just with the Ride DCTA app. It's with other things like our transit tracker, or making sure they have rider alerts, so they're not calling in and saying, why is my bus delayed? You know, our representatives are trying to educate right now with the tools that we have. But when we build this out bigger, we're going to make sure that we set ourselves and the customers up for success. Okay, so when we talk about call integration and what we can actually absorb from GoZone, we've broken down the call types. You've seen the volume from each of those call types. Right now, VIA is taking all these, and on this table here, you'll see the contact type, what's the description of it, what type of call it is, who's currently taking it, which is going to be VIA, and what's the proposed. And then you'll have the reasoning here as to why we should be able to take that call or why it needs to stay with VIA. Our abandoned and disconnected calls, that's just going to be anyone, you know, that someone's going to hang up on those. So we'll both experience that. Now, what you see displayed here is our GoZone and DCTA hourly call distribution. Now, what we've done here is use this in order to help us determine how much staff will we really need in order to absorb these calls, right, as they are today with the call volumes. And what we've done is broken this down into different periods. So we have 5 periods. You have your AM, your mid, your peak, which is where we're going to see the highest volume of our calls, our PM, and then our late. Now, one thing we've done for the FTE in order to figure out our max FTEs that we'll need in order to sustain those service levels, in order for me to say, hey, we're hitting our KPIs out the park. We use a tool in customer service. It's called an Erlang calculator. And this Erlang calculator helps you determine how many FTEs you'll need in order to properly staff and answer those phone calls, so you're not hitting that 24% abandonment rate. So what it basically says is you take a length of time, which is called an Erlang. So what we're doing is taking, you'll see in the planning factors, 60 minutes, so an hour. And we're saying that we want our average handle time to be 4 minutes, right? So we'll plug that in our 4 minutes, and we're saying that our service levels, we want 80% of our calls answered within 20 seconds. And that's an industry standard service level with most call centers. And so what this Erlang calculator does, it also, I lost my word. It also accounts for shrinkage. And so shrinkage is any time that one of our representatives is going to be away from the phone, either on break, lunch, vacation. So it builds in that 30% shrinkage. And so what it does, it says, okay, in order for you to maintain these service levels and make sure that you're hitting them, you're going to need this many FTEs. So that's going to be represented in our max FTEs. Now, our minimum FTEs, this calculation is an in-house calculation that was provided to y'all in our last conversation. So it's just comparison of the two in order for us to look at that range. Do y'all have any questions on that? Okay. So as we talk about self-service tools, and like Paul mentioned earlier, we have now for our paratransit customers, which is our most popular call that we receive in the call center. It's an app called Ride DCTA app. And as you know, we brought on the Collin County Ride Service, and they had about a 30% adoption of this app when they got brought onto our network. So what we did, our customer service reps through intentional education, was made sure that they were promoting that app to our Collin County customers in order for them to be more self-sufficient. So you don't have to call in and make this book this trip. You can download our app. And with that education, we've seen an increase that 60% of our Collin County rides are booking through this app today. So what does this app do? Well, it helps schedule your trips. You can change your payment type in there. You can cancel your trips. Really, it's a one-stop shop to where you don't have to reach our call center unless you really want to talk to us. So future users, right now, we have a test group for our member cities, Denton, Highland Village, and Louisville. We have about 20 people who are testing it out there. 12% in October, we saw about 12% of those rides in our member cities were being booked through the app. Feedback that I'm getting, because I'm in conversations with them, how's it going? Do you need any help, et cetera? Very positive. They're very excited that they that they don't have to call in for one thing. Some people did say that they miss talking to, our representatives, but they don't have to call in, wait on hold. And one cool thing about it is that they can track the ride. So we have some parents who send their kids to special abilities and they can see where their child is. So they love that feature as well. So what we have here is a proposed customer service model. So at the beginning, I gave the breakdown of, you have to be transferred to GoZone right now. We have some in-house calls, et cetera. This will be our proposed model to where we would be absorbing a majority of those GoZone rides. However, the GoZone driver experience and complaint will still be supplemented by VIA. That's because they have the software and they can handle those a little bit quicker than we can. And then, of course, our downtown transit, we still have people being able to walk in and get that service as well. So what does this look like, right? What scenarios do we have in order to absorb those calls? Well, one thing we can do, I gave you all this and y'all can just say, you know what? Keep all the calls at VIA and y'all keep doing what you're doing. Right now we're doing that. Our annual support for that is about $587,000. Or we can absorb all of the GoZone calls for all hours of the day that they're taking them, 7 days a week, 365. Or option 3, VIA can help us with support Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. and on full weekends. So we're primarily hitting that peak time when all those customers are coming in. So most of those customers are getting that local service. And then we have our last option where VIA provides support Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. plus full weekends. So we'll handle that service from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. So some things that we are currently working through and opportunities that we saw as a department as a whole. You've kept hearing me talk about this customer resource management system. We are working closely with our tech services department in order to see what options we have to get that installed. Once we have that, we'll have more capability to get that robust data. We can get those call wait times that we so desperately need. And also that helps with us planning our workforce as well. One cool thing about a CRM system is it has something called a workforce management component, and it looks at historical data and it'll let me know, okay, last year, this time you took this many calls, this is how many representatives you can allow off for a vacation or around the holidays or something. So it helps us better staff. And then we have our logistics part. Right now, we're kind of locked office space of where we are. So looking at a redesign or possibly upgrade to the DDDC. And then lastly, our resources and technology, looking at our current phone system and seeing what options we have to improve that as well. So our next steps is continue our evaluation of our call center operations and processes. And then also continue having those conversations with VIA to making sure that we're making the best decision possible. Also with the that's going to require what we need in the upcoming RFP that we're going for. And then we're going to continue researching those CRM systems and phone systems for implementation for FY26 and beyond. And then we're going to also look at those expansions or upgrades to our current service for our, renovations for the DDTC. And then lastly, we're going to continue having conversations with our staff. Our staff is our best asset that we have. And what I like to tell them is that y'all have been in the trenches here longer than I have, and y'all have that historical knowledge. So leveraging them on what has worked and what has in the past will be critical to our next step. But that's all I have. Y'all have any questions? It's a lot.
Good work.
Thank you.
Good discussion. Any questions for Randy?
I have a question. So back to, I guess my presentation says it's slide 54.
Okay.
It's when we had the per hour snapshot. Yes. Yes, that one. So am I reading this correctly where it says the maximum required FTEs would be up to 8.5?
Mhm.
And we're currently at 5?
Yes.
Okay. So, and that is assuming kind of a call volume that's consistent with what we currently have?
What we currently have plus the go zone call volume.
Right.
Yes,
So, but that's based on current, not, any projections of what we
It's
think it
current,
might,
correct, yes,
what it might be. Because I mean, I do think that it sounds like if VIA or whoever is answering those go zone calls continues with, promoting the app, and we're continuing to do that on our end as well. I'm just curious if there would start to be a trend to where some of those people would start to convert to booking their own rides. I'm not quite sure as far as the DCTA, what percentage of our calls are for county rides? I know you mentioned that there was 60% of those are now being booked through the app. But what's that overall percentage of what we're getting from DCTA? Are we seeing, is that a larger volume like it is for VIA, where we're booking a bunch of rides, or is it mostly paratransit, or what?
Right now, we can't drill down between if it's Collin County, Frisco, or member cities. That's our bulk of our ride bookings. Ride bookings is our most popular call that we're getting in the call center, but not to say that if we have a service change like the ISP and stuff, that's where we start seeing those different calls, such as where can I catch the bus now? We have UNT students who come onto our network that also has that call influx in August and September, and also in the spring as well. So that's a driver for our calls as well. So yes, the self-service tools can help with the paratransit, but we also have that other set of calls that are generated from our other services, A-Train and Connect as well.
Okay.
I think important for that question, order of magnitude, Go Zone is 800 and some odd thousand rides a year. Collin County rides is less than 50,000 rides a year. So 60% of a much smaller number. The other thing that I'll mention here with regard to FTEs, mins and maxes, the min is the homegrown methodology that I produced last year when I didn't have any context. We're just trying to understand how do we get our hands around the problem. The Erlang calculator provides more of an industry standard approach, and that is talking about FTEs required in that given time period. We've got 5 FTEs, 3 of whom are only answering phone calls, but they don't work the entire shift. So we can't look at that and say, oh, if you have 5 FTEs, you can cover all of this. You have to have 5 FTEs in all these various times of day. And so our next step here is to figure out what is the full complement of staffing to meet that level of service all throughout the day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I guess, so that does help, but I'm also just trying to understand better, if we are seeing a conversion of, if the majority of the calls for both VIA and DCTA are for booking, but we're also seeing a trend where people are starting to move from booking through the phone to the app. How do we plan for that? You know, what I would hate to do is to say, okay, well, we need to go hire, you know, five more customer service representatives, and then our call volume starts to drop because people are converting over. So I guess that's what I'm
Yes.
trying to get to and all of that.
Great point, and I'll take this too, because I was in the conversation last October, and that was the direction from the board. We'd like to see another year's worth of data, because we had heard at that time that VIA was going to introduce this IVR sort of system. And so now we see that there was some effectiveness there. I think that the way that we would approach this insourcing effort would be to kind of layer it in over time, add some pieces, do the training for customers, watch the KPIs improve, and then sort of incrementally progress through total insourcing and figure out where we're comfortable with the KPIs being ultimately.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. The other thing that I'll say here is, Randy mentioned the team that was existing. One of the major drivers for my recommendation on insourcing in TMC was so that DCTA would have the ability to impact what was happening in customer service and transitioning the culture of DCTA to that organization. Randy's done a great job with that by taking care of those employees that we've had and bringing them into the fold. So I appreciate her, not just her technical expertise in the work that she's done here, but her leadership ability in the halls of the customer service
And
organization.
I would just say that, you know, in the grand scheme of things, I agree. I think it would be, I would feel better about, customer service for Go Zone to be people who are here, who know the area, who aren't, you know, from across the,
Across the country or across the nation?
yes,
across the world.
the world, yes. So I think that they, you know, people who are local are gonna be able to help people more efficiently. But I guess what it boils down to is what's the cost?
Right.
And it sounds like we don't quite know that yet.
So we're working on the scenarios that she laid out. We're working on in our conversation with VIA, who's our current contractor, and there's been some great ideas generated, like maybe it's they work on the bookends of the day, the very early morning hours, the very late hours, but DCTA handles the core during the peak business period, which would help lower. Here's the lower number of FTEs, lower amount of a Go Zone contract, let's say. So that's the next work we want to do, is figure out what those options are and what's the trade-off of contract cost versus people. The complicating factor here is, I'll give a briefing item next about our RFP for our demand response service. And so we're going to talk about what that will look like inside the RFP, because it may not be VIA providing that service in the future. So.
Question about the logic, don't mind the 7 days a week on customer service. Don't have courage to call a lot of the current people that I'm dealing with on Saturday.
Mhm.
They need it.
Well, we are operating that because our service is running on Saturday and Sunday, and so it's important that people have access to us.
That being the case, in the town that I live in, they also have certain special things. Certain weekends, concerts. Need expansion,
But potentially, I don't know that maybe the CRM system would help us parse better what happens in what days of the week and different events and all that sort of thing. But that potentially, anything that would surge ridership could surge customer service call volume. Thank you, Randy.
Well, thank y'all.
Okay, that takes us to item number 5. This item is discussed update on the on-demand transportation network and company and demand responsive requests for proposals. This will be Paul Christina. Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. The purpose of this briefing is to bring you up to date on the RFPs that are now imminent for our demand response and on-demand services. So to recap briefings from earlier this year, We talked about how in the 2017, 2019 timeframe, this agency had launched an RFP that was just called Mobility as a Service and searched far and wide for any things that were out there that were seemed to be technology driven, on demand based. And then this agency would contract with those organizations for the services that we have today. From that contract primarily is where we got our contracts now with Irving Holdings, Via, Lyft, Spare, and others. So in our briefings earlier this year, we talked about the need to separate these sorts of solicitations. And now that we understand what on-demand transit is and what demand response transit is, we want to have separate engagements for each of those services. And so we take those kind of nested approaches and turn it into these three different approaches. When we talk about connected transit modes, bike share, scooters, all that sort of stuff, that's not on the table today. That'll be in the future. For today, we're talking about what does the future of our on-demand ride share look like? And then what does the future of our on-call transit service look like? And we're going to call these things demand response. Think demand response, think GoZone. On-demand services, think about Irving Holdings, contracted services, those sorts of things. So first, we'll talk about the demand response contract. What is this? How do we define it? We define this as a system in which users request a ride through an app or an online platform. It operates as a part of our overall network. It's accessible to the general public. It deploys a fixed capacity of vehicles and operators that are dedicated to our system, and it enables DCTA and our partners to actively manage the daily service by adjusting deployed capacity, zones, all that sort of stuff. These are things that we have been doing over the course of the last several years successfully under our contract with Via. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to continue that service. We're trying to utilize GoZone as a component within our overall multimodal network to integrate. We want to connect GoZone with the train, with the buses, and all those sorts of things. We want the ability to be able to amend the scope of services to put GoZone in places where it doesn't exist today, if those opportunities arise. We want to be able to integrate technology so that people can plan, book, and pay for travel across all these modes seamlessly. One of the things that you've seen this year with the intermediate service plan is now if you're booking a GoZone ride in Denton and you're close to a bus, it'll give you a selection or an option to say, hey, walk over to this bus stop and take the bus to complete your trip. Those are the sorts of tools that we will need to continue building our network. And so we want to make sure that we have those. And then, as we just talked about, top quality customer service with localized in-house expertise that's supplemented by a contractor as it may be required, which is exactly what we were talking about just a minute ago. So what we've done is created a scope of services for demand response that evaluates on a number of different items. But when we talk about the scope of work particularly, these are the things that we're asking for. We're asking for proposers to tell us about their vehicles, about their drivers and management, about their safety program, how their accessibility functions work, how they calculate and collect fares, what the app looks like, all these sorts of things. I'll point you to this. What is your support for in-house customer service? The conversations that we've had with Via over time have progressed. They've been very productive. As we've gathered more data, we've seen and understood better about what our needs are going to be. And so we're going to ask proposers to tell us, okay, if you get it completely insourced, what would that look like? What would it cost? Where would the calls be answered? All that sort of thing. Or if we wanted to do or if we did it completely outsourced, what would that look like? If we wanted to insource it and DCTA were to take on these functions, how could you support that? That way, when we get these proposals, we can see what the approaches would be, what the costs would be, and we can develop the alternatives that Randy just laid out for you. So that's demand response or GoZone. Now, for our on-demand services, how do we define that? This is a user that can request a ride or schedule transportation according to specific needs through the customer service department or an app that would be powered by DCTA's scheduling platform that we have with Spare Labs. It was the Spare Labs platform that brought us the Ride DCTA app that is now being piloted amongst our member cities for paratransit services. And as Randy said, we're going to continue to push that as another way to better serve customers and drive down call volume. These are services that will be accessible to qualified individuals, typically elderly, disabled, ADA qualified. And these could be either dedicated fleet or a transportation network company. When we talk about a dedicated fleet, we're talking about like what exists in the Frisco, taxi service today. Irving Holdings deploys a fixed number of taxis to that service every day. And when people book their rides for that taxi service, that is who picks them up. However, sometimes when those taxis aren't available because of high demand, we supplement those rides through a TNC, which in this case is Lyft. So our dispatch center can then take a ride that is not able to be accommodated by Irving Holdings and put that over to Lyft. Either of these two options would suffice under the on-demand services model, and proposals will have the opportunity to say, I can do one of those or the other, or I can do both. And if they want to do both, they'll submit separate proposals. We intend to select one contractor for the demand response service to take on GoZone. We intend to select multiple contractors for both of these types of services so that we can have a portfolio of team members available to us. Yes, sir.
How do you see this, the on-demand interfacing or working with SPAN? Or will they just be two separate systems?
Well, currently SPAN and DCTA are completely separate systems, but if you look at the types of services that SPAN provides and the types of services that we're providing in Frisco and in Collin County, so on and so forth, they're very similar. These would be the types of services that would provide those sorts of trips.
So if SPAN went away, in essence, this could ramp up for that.
Potentially. Okay. So what are we looking for these on-demand transit services? We want to make sure that they are cost effective and that they're allowing us to apply them very precisely for specific applications that may be of interest for these non-member cities that we engage with, or potentially member cities. We want to be able to integrate them seamlessly into our electronic booking and trip planning platform. Our arrangement and relationship with Spare has been very successful this year. We just launched the program in January. We redid our entire paratransit dispatching system in-house, and then that's what we used to launch Collin County Rides. It's worked very well. We want it to continue to work. So proposers' ability to integrate into that system is going to be really important to us. We want to be able to be very nimble and flexible to serve specific populations like wheelchair users and those who need the most help. And then again, continuing to angle towards innovation and technology. So similarly to the demand response contract here, we're going to be asking people to tell us about their service model. Are you a dedicated fleet or are you a transportation network company? What do you need in order to integrate with the operation that we already have? How do you train your personnel? How do you report on data? That's another thing that we're going to be asking for in both of these solicitations is we want access to the data. We want to be able to ingest the data in real time into the infrastructure that we're building so that we can better understand our service. And so proposals will have the chance to tell us how well they can help us do that. So these are not later than milestones in the timeline that we expect. We intend to issue RFPs this month, have proposals received by February, interviews by March, bring a recommendation to the board no later than April. I would actually like to have this go a little bit faster and maybe get done by March, but this is no later than sort of timeline. And what that will do is allow us to have a contract award and then have many months to make sure that we have integration and transition in the event that there are new providers of the service after the RFP. These services are critical to our portfolio. We have to have smooth transition. We have to be able to show, proposers have to show how they're going to minimize risk to our operation. We simply cannot have an interruption. And so we want to make sure we got plenty of time to allow that transition to happen if it's necessary. So with that, I'll answer any other questions you might have.
Any questions for Paul? Seeing none. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank you.
So that concludes item 5. Next item is discuss update to the transportation reinvestment policy. That is also going to be run by Paul.
So thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. The purpose of this briefing item, this is a discussion only, is really just to recap the conversation that we had with you last month about the future of the TRIP program. In your packet, you have a redlined copy of the TRIP policy that really is intended to capture the substance of the conversation that was had in the last board meeting. So in this briefing, all I was going to do was just touch at a high level of the language that is being changed. The main message from the board in the last meeting was it's been working really well. Let's minimize impact. Let's make sure that it is extended and goes on into the long term. And let's make sure that the board of directors has the ability to adjust and flex on the funding available to the program based on budgetary needs. So all of the red lines that you see in this packet are oriented in that direction. Again, the red line copy of this is in your packet that you have in front of you, but I'll highlight these up on the screen. In terms of the scope of the policy, this is the key sentence. Effective with the approval of this policy, the TRIP program continues in 2026 and will not expire. With regard to funding, the main component here is at the top. Previously, it said the TRIP budget is 15% of the net available fund balance. Now it says the budget will be equal to not more than 15% of the net available fund balance, and that the DCTA board will establish that amount annually during the budgeting process for the upcoming fiscal year. This was another key component, and this is really the reason for having the conversation now. While the TRIP policy is in effect all through fiscal year 2025, currently as the policy is written, with the call for projects that's going to happen in January, the policy says that unobligated funds, not on this screen, but it says that unobligated funds would revert to the agency. Having this amendment made in the January timeframe allows us to take that away. And now those funds will remain with DCTA until reimbursements have been made to the member cities. So again, the funds do not expire. Then we made a minor change with regard to reporting, and we've introduced and want to go back to this language about there's authorized money under the TRIP program, there's obligated money under the TRIP program, and then there's reimbursed money under the TRIP program. And that's the way that we monitor how the money flows through the program. And then lastly, the policy referenced a table A that talked about projects that were eligible for planning and design funding. The board said we want to continue the ability to be flexible in planning and design funding. And all we did was update the title of the table to say this is about planning and design funding eligible projects. So with that, again, the purpose of this briefing is just to make sure that we sort of captured the essence of what the board is after correctly. And we would intend to bring this to you in January for the approval of a revised policy when the call for projects briefing is offered.
With that, is there any questions? You think you captured everything that we want to see?
Mr. Chair, my only comment is that the portion about the funds not expiring, the ability to roll it over. So from Highland Village's perspective, that was the most important thing. So thank you all for supporting that.
Your comments, thoughts? Oh, yes.
I know we briefly talked about land acquisition. Was that in here?
It was silent in the previous policy and it remains silent. So
Silent.
that way the board has the flexibility to do that if you would like.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none? Thanks, Paul. Okay, that concludes item 6. Item 7, discuss local and regional updates and legislative issues. Anything from the board of directors want to talk about? If not, Paul, do you have any updates on regional, local issues?
Just, Mr. Chair, that we continue to be engaged with POG and staff about Regional Transit 2.0. I've had some more good conversations with their consultant team and expect to see some deliverables in the next several weeks that we'll have the chance to proofread and review, and we will coordinate with you all on that as we see it come in.
Great. And is Mr. Moore still going to speak to us at our retreat? Is that still?
He is currently scheduled to be with us as a guest right at the end of January.
It's 11:30 39, let the record show that Chair Gilmore has returned.
What a deal. All right, so we do have informational reports. Unless there's other around the table updates regarding local or regional legislative issues. Oh, okay, very good. I will say that the city of Louisville has been actively talking with our state legislators, and one of our priorities that we put on there was to open the conversation about transit funding from the state. So while I don't expect them to uncover any new money, I would love the opportunity for them to at least look at the existing funding and allow it to be considered for transit options. So we have not gotten significant pushback on that, but I also think that it's a long conversation. So we'll get through that. We do have some informational reports in the packets. I don't know if anybody got a chance to look at those, but if you have questions, those are our safety, service, and ridership reports. We also have an update on landscaping maintenance, contract solicitation in our background information. No questions on any of those. We'll go ahead and any future agenda items or board member requests at this time. We've got our next regular board meeting date scheduled for January 23rd. We have our Board of Directors Strategic Workshop tentatively scheduled for the 30th and 31st. So I know there's some conversation on that, so that's why I threw the tentative on there. Well, maybe we may need to flex a little bit on those dates. All right, if there are no questions on those. We'll move to report on items of community interest. Anybody have a community they are interested in and want to share?
Mr. Child just mentioned that this Saturday, Highland Village is having its Christmas at the Ranch, Doubletree Ranch Park. We'll have actual live reindeer, real snow, a lot of other events. And if you're coming from Louisville or Denton, it's a great opportunity to take the train and stop at the station there and walk across.
Absolutely. That's a great one. Any others? Many of our local cities, including Louisville, have Santa riding around on fire apparatus. So if you get a chance, you want to find out, usually you can go to your city's website. Louisville has a Santa tracker, so you can see Santa from 6 to 8 p.m. You can see exactly where he is roaming around the city, which is really cool. But I hope everybody is having a wonderful holiday season, or at least is taking some personal time to deal with the stress of a wonderful holiday season. We've got a lot going on, I'm sure. With that, do we have executive session today, Paul?
No, sir.
All right. So as we have no executive session and there's no additional action to be taken on today's agenda, we stand adjourned.